You're asked to solve each equation for x being between 0 and 2 pi, and we're to give exact answers, meaning we're not really using a calculator here. So, a couple things to start with this one. I always like to remind people, because this is a different example that is really easy for a lot of people. When I say, hey, solve for x for this red equation, well, they know, hey, I'm really looking at, when does x make this side equal to 0, and when does x make this side equal to 0? And usually people do this part in their head and are like, yeah, that's super easy. But they don't apply that to a problem that looks like this, where we have sines and cosine. And that's a mistake, because when we go through this, if we're ever setting something equal to 0 and we're multiplying, in this case, sine of x, cosine x plus 1 together, we can really just solve them individually, because if this is 0, then it makes the whole thing 0, or if this is 0, it makes the whole thing 0. So just make sure to keep that in mind when you're going through these problems when it's solving and we're equal to 0 here. So I'm going to start by solving for sine of x being equal to 0. The way to do this without a calculator and actually just, inverse of sine and all that kind of stuff is to look at a unit circle. If we are looking at a unit circle, we should remember that sine is the y value on the unit circle. And so if I'm looking at the unit circle to see where is the y value 0, well, there's two spots, one here and one here. That's my two spots on the circle where y is 0. And I'm not looking for like the coordinates here. I'm looking for x, which is the angle at those 2 points. And so really what we're saying here is that we're going from 0 here. We haven't started anywhere. So my first angle is going to be 0. And then my second angle is all the way around here to either 180, or I'm going to want your answers in radians. So x is equal to pi. So that's my first two answers just from the left side here. Now the second side, the cosine x plus 1, I also need to try and solve for that. So cosine of x plus 1 equals 0. In this case, I want to get x by itself, so I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. And now when I look at the unit circle, I'm looking at cosine, meaning the x values on the unit circle. Where is the x value equal to -1? Well, I know that that's this point right here, and I'm looking for the angle, don't forget, which in this case, we actually already have in our answers because it is pi. So really our only two answers in this one here are x equals 0 and x equals pi. Be very careful of like where we're looking for it, because technically it's also 2 pi, but because it doesn't say less than or equal to here, it means that it's just 0 and pi. Second one here, same idea. I'm going to start by solving for cosine of x when that is equal to 0. And so I look at my unit circle. When is the x value equal to 0? Well, that's the top and the bottom here. So this angle here is pi over 2. This angle all the way around here is 3 pi over 2. So those are the two solutions I get from this left side. Now the right side, tangent of x minus 1, so tan x minus 1 equals 0. I'm going to add that 1 to the other side. Oops. And now I got to solve for when is tangent equal to 1. And remember, the key thing to remember on this is that tangent is equal to, tan of x is sine x over cosine x. Meaning, if tangent is equal to 1, then sine x and cosine x have to be the same thing. Because when they're the same thing, if I divide something by itself, that's what gives me 1. So what that means is that I'm looking on my unit circle here. What I know about the unit circle is when are the coordinates exactly the same? And in that situation here, we have it in these 2 points here, because that's the one where it's root 2 over 2, root 2 over 2. This one's negative root 2 over 2 and negative root 2 over 2. And it's only those 2 points, because some people might think like, oh, well, what about over here where it's root 2 over root 2 here? Well, one of them's negative and one of them's not. So if I divided those, I would not get 1, I would get -1. So my 2 points here, I'm again, remember, looking for the angle. So my angle for that one would be pi over 4. And my angle for this one here would be 5 pi over 4. These become a lot easier when you get more and more comfortable with the unit circle. So I'm kind of breezing by that part because it's stuff that we've talked about before, but really, like, this is a lot of practice with figuring out, like, if I can find a coordinate or a point on the unit circle, what angle is that? So the more practice you get, the easier it becomes.